What if a library could look like a stack of shifting glass boxes, defy gravity, spark controversy, and still become one of the most beloved public buildings of the 21st century? Welcome back to UrbArchitect, where today we're diving deep into the Seattle Central Library, a building so radical, so unapologetically bold, that when it opened in 2004, some critics called it a spaceship, others called it a masterpiece, and the city of Seattle simply called it home. Designed by the Office for Metropolitan Architecture, better known as OMA, led by the legendary Dutch architect Reem Koolhaas alongside Joshua Prince-Ramus, this 11-story, 362,987 square foot urban monument didn't just reimagine what a library could be, it challenged every assumption about public architecture at the turn of the millennium, right when the internet was supposedly rendering books obsolete, right when cities were competing for iconic landmarks, and right when architecture itself was caught between the spectacle of the digital age and the substance of social responsibility. So buckle up, because we're about to explore how a pile of angular glass and steel became a revolutionary statement about democracy, knowledge, and the future of civic space in an era when everyone thought libraries were dying. Let's start with the context, because you can't understand this building without understanding Seattle in the late 1990s. This was a city riding high on the tech boom, home to Microsoft. Amazon was just getting started, coffee culture was exploding thanks to Starbucks, and the Pacific Northwest was positioning itself as America's progressive, forward-thinking, rain-soaked Silicon Valley before Silicon Valley completely took over that narrative. The old Seattle Public Library, built in 1960, was falling apart, literally. It was seismically unsafe, overcrowded, and hopelessly outdated for the information age. So in 1998, Seattle voters approved a stunning $196.4 million bond measure to build a new central library, which was not just generous, it was visionary, because this was a city betting big on public infrastructure right when everyone else was betting on dot-com stocks. The city launched an international competition, and OMA's proposal beat out heavyweights like Stephen Hall and Moshe Safdie, not because it was safe or predictable, but because it was the exact opposite. It was dangerous, provocative, and utterly original, proposing a building that would challenge Seattle's architectural conservatism while serving as a functional tool for democracy in the digital age. Reem Koolhaas, already famous for his theoretical writings and projects like the Kunstel in Rotterdam and the Casa de Musica in Porto, saw the library not as a temple to the past but as a dynamic social infrastructure, a place where physical books and digital information could coexist, where homeless people and tech workers could share space, where architecture could actively shape how people learn, discover, and interact. This wasn't going to be your grandmother's library with hushed reading rooms and card catalogs. This was going to be a vertical urban landscape, a three-dimensional city inside a building, and that ambitious vision is exactly what makes it so fascinating to analyze as architects. Now let's talk about the design concept, because this is where OMA's genius really shines through. The fundamental move was radical simplicity. Take the complex program of a modern library, all its different functions, reading rooms, book storage, staff areas, meeting spaces, parking, and instead of blending them into a homogeneous whole, separate them into distinct programmatic platforms, literally stacking them like a vertical neighborhood where each floor has a clear identity and purpose. Koolhaas identified 5 primary platforms: the floating platform at the top with staff headquarters, the living room and mixing chamber on the lower levels serving as flexible public gathering spaces, the spiral for the book collection wrapping continuously through 4 floors, the meeting platform with conference rooms, and the reading room with its spectacular sloped ceiling and views over the city. These platforms are not aligned in a traditional vertical stack. Instead, they're offset, cantilevered, and rotated, creating those dramatic angular shifts that give the building its distinctive faceted appearance. And the spaces between the platforms become equally important. These interstitial zones where escalators, stairs, and open voids create visual connections across multiple levels, making the building feel porous and interconnected, rather than segregated into isolated floors. The most revolutionary element is the book spiral, a continuous, gently sloping ramp that winds through 4 floors without interruption, allowing the entire nonfiction collection to be arranged in perfect Dewey Decimal order, along a single path that visitors can traverse from the 000s to the 999s without ever taking stairs or elevators, which sounds simple but is actually a profound rethinking of how libraries organize knowledge, transforming the search for information into a spatial experience rather than a navigational puzzle. This spiral concept means you can literally walk through human knowledge in sequence, from computer science to philosophy to history to literature, experiencing the relationships between disciplines in a physical journey. And for architects, it's a masterclass in how a programmatic requirement, efficient book storage and retrieval, can become the primary generator of architectural form. The geometry itself is endlessly fascinating. The building envelope is composed of flat faceted planes that wrap around these offset platforms, creating a geogrid structure of diagonal steel members that forms both the structural system and the architectural expression. And every angle, every fold, every surface is precisely calculated. There are no curves here, just flat planes meeting at sharp angles, giving the building a crystalline, almost geological quality, as if it emerged from the earth fully formed rather than being constructed piece by piece. Let's dig into the technical aspects because this building is an engineering marvel disguised as a sculptural object. The structural system is a geogrid steel frame, meaning the primary structure consists of diagonal members arranged in a triangular pattern that wraps the entire building like an exoskeleton. This system is incredibly efficient because it resists both gravity and lateral loads through the geometry itself rather than relying on traditional columns and beams, allowing those dramatic cantilevers and open interiors without massive structural intrusions. The longest cantilever extends about 52 feet at the 5th floor, which is substantial for a building of this size. And it's achieved through careful load distribution across the geogrid and strategic placement of steel trusses that transfer loads back to the core and foundation. The façade is a double-skin system composed of an outer layer of diamond-shaped glass panels stretched over the geogrid structure, and an inner wall of floor-to-ceiling glazing. This creates a cavity between the two skins that provides thermal insulation, reduces solar heat gain, and creates that distinctive shimmering appearance as light refracts through the multiple layers. And here's a fun detail. The expanded aluminum mesh stretched across the geogrid serves both structural and environmental purposes, stiffening the steel frame while acting as a sunshade. And its diamond pattern creates ever-changing more effects as you move around the building, transforming what could have been a purely functional element into a dynamic visual experience. The choice of materials is deliberately industrial and honest. The geogrid is exposed painted steel in a distinctive chartreuse color that's become iconic. The glass is low iron for maximum transparency. The interior features exposed concrete floors, industrial lighting, and bright accent colors in yellows, reds, and greens that energize the spaces. Nothing is hidden or prettified. The building celebrates its own construction logic in a way that's quintessentially OMA. Digital design tools were absolutely critical to this project. OMA used early parametric modeling software to coordinate the complex geometry, analyze structural performance, and coordinate the thousands of unique glass panels, each one slightly different, that form the façade. This was 2004, remember, before Revit was ubiquitous, before computational design was standard practice. So this building represents a pioneering moment in the digital design revolution that would soon transform architectural production. The environmental strategy is also worth noting. While the building isn't certified LEED or anything, it incorporates passive strategies like the double-skin façade, natural ventilation in certain zones, daylighting throughout the public areas, and a sophisticated building management system that optimizes energy use. The transparency isn't just aesthetic, it's functional, reducing the need for artificial lighting during daytime and creating visual connections between inside and outside that make the building feel permeable and integrated with the urban fabric. Now let's talk about impact and symbolism, because this building's influence extends far beyond Seattle. When it opened in May 2004, it immediately became a global architecture phenomenon, drawing visitors from around the world, winning the AIA Architecture Award and countless other honors, and sparking intense debate about the role of iconicity in public architecture. Some critics argued it was too expensive, too radical, too focused on spectacle rather than function, but those criticisms largely evaporated once people actually used the building and discovered it wasn't just beautiful, it was remarkably functional. Circulation is intuitive despite the complex geometry. Spaces are flexible and well lit. Acoustics are carefully controlled, and most importantly, the public loved it. Circulation increased dramatically. People came not just to check out books but to hang out, work, meet friends, attend events, use free computers, even just to experience the architecture itself, proving that iconic design and social utility aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they can be mutually reinforcing. The Seattle Central Library arrived at a critical moment in library history. The digital revolution was well underway. Amazon had already disrupted bookselling. Google was about to digitize millions of books, and cultural commentators were writing obituaries for physical libraries. Yet OMA's design made a powerful counter-argument that libraries aren't just about storing books, they're about providing democratic access to information, creating civic common ground in increasingly privatized cities, offering free public space in an era of commercialization, and facilitating human connection in a digital age that threatens to isolate us behind screens. The building's transparency is deeply symbolic. Glass walls make the interior visible from the street and vice versa, democratizing architecture by making it legible and accessible, breaking down barriers between institution and citizen, and creating a building that performs its civic function visibly, proudly. In the heart of downtown, you can literally see democracy at work, people of all backgrounds sharing space, accessing resources, engaging with ideas, and this visibility extends vertically too. The open voids and interconnected levels create sightlines across the building, making it feel communal rather than compartmentalized. The library has influenced countless civic projects worldwide, demonstrating that public architecture can be both formally innovative and socially responsible, that radical design doesn't have to mean elitist or alienating, and that investment in public infrastructure, done right, pays enormous dividends in civic pride, social cohesion, and urban vitality. It's become a model for 21st century civic architecture, showing how buildings can adapt to changing technologies and social patterns while maintaining their core mission. The genius of OMA's design is that it's simultaneously flexible and specific. The programmatic platforms can be reconfigured as needs change, but the strong spatial identity and architectural character remain constant. It's architecture that's both of its moment and timeless, which is the holy grail we're all chasing. From an architectural theory perspective, the Seattle Central Library represents a maturation of OMA's ideas about programmatic organization and architectural bigness that Koolhaas explored in his writings. It's a built manifesto demonstrating how architecture can generate form from program rather than imposing aesthetic preferences, how complexity can be organized rather than simplified, and how public buildings can embrace rather than resist the messy, contradictory, democratic chaos of contemporary urban life. The building also represents a particular moment in architectural culture post-Bilbao, when cities were commissioning bold architectural statements to put themselves on the global map. But unlike many of those projects which prioritized external spectacle over internal function, the Seattle Library achieves both. It's undeniably iconic from the outside, but walk inside and you discover that spectacular form is completely integrated with how the building works. Every angle serves a purpose. Every material choice supports the program. Nothing is arbitrary or purely decorative, which is the difference between starchitecture and truly great architecture. In conclusion, the Seattle Central Library stands as one of the defining public buildings of the early 21st century, a project that successfully navigated the impossible challenge facing architects today: how to create buildings that are simultaneously functional and iconic, democratic and distinctive, technologically advanced and humanly scaled, environmentally responsible and formally bold. OMA's design proves that these aren't contradictory goals, they're complementary ones, that the best architecture doesn't choose between beauty and utility but finds beauty in utility, that the most powerful statements aren't imposed on programs but emerge from them, and that public buildings, when conceived with ambition, intelligence, and genuine commitment to civic values, can still inspire, serve, and endure in our complex, rapidly changing world. 20 years after its completion, the Seattle Central Library remains as vital and relevant as ever. Its space is filled with people, its program adapted to new technologies and social needs, its architecture still generating discussion and admiration, proving that bold, uncompromising, deeply thoughtful design isn't a luxury for public buildings, it's a necessity, because these are the structures that define our cities, express our values, and shape how future generations understand what it means to build for the common good. As architects and students, we have much to learn from this building. Study how program generates form, how structure and enclosure integrate, how public space can be choreographed across multiple levels, how materials and details support larger conceptual goals, and most importantly, how architecture at its best doesn't just solve problems, it transforms them into opportunities for innovation, beauty, and meaning. That's the legacy of the Seattle Central Library, and that's why it remains essential study material for anyone serious about understanding contemporary architecture.